Hello and welcome back to the shed. In today's video I'm going to be talking about workpiece holding at the workbench. Hope you enjoy. If you've seen any of my build videos up until now, you'll notice that I use my face vise a lot. The main reason that I use my face vise a lot is the fact that it's easy and quick to move in and out because this is a quick release vise. So it's very easy for safety to move in and out of the vise to hold your workpiece. There's a few good things that you need to know when it comes to a face vise. I like to have a nice one that doesn't rack, which means it doesn't move when you clamp in one side or the other. I also like it to be quick release, just to make it that much easier and faster to move in and out of it. So pretty much any operations where I need my workpiece to be held and I don't need the firm support of the workbench under it, I'll use my vise. I'll talk you through a few of the different operations that I use my face vise for. So obviously here I've got quite a wide face vise, so it's about 8 inches jaw to jaw through this gap here. Now obviously I can hold my workpieces long ways like this, and I can do hand planing. It's not moving at all. The other thing I can do is then come in, clamp on one edge, and because it doesn't rack, I can hold a workpiece right down this end here, and it's held sturdy and it's not moving. And I can obviously come in, do work on the end of the boards, like cutting dovetails. The other thing I can do with this face vise, because of the way I've got it set up, is that it's flush here with the edge of my workbench. And it allows me to utilise the full front of the vise here to clamp right down to the far leg and go right to the edge of the workbench. And that means that I could work on the top of a board or a sheet like this, hand plane on the top of it or the bottom of it. The choices are really endless. The next thing I do quite a bit with my face vise is obviously clamping my workpiece in here and do some pairing so it's not moving, so it's not dangerous. And you can see that this is not going anywhere. So now you might be asking, well, what if I've got stuff that needs supporting underneath of it, like cutting a mortise or holding a wide board to face plane? How do I go about doing that? Because obviously it's not going to fit in the face vise. Well, I'm glad you asked. That's where I come in and I start using something called a holdfast. These go into what are called dog holes, where they wedge in there and they hold your workpiece on the top of your work. So let me bring you in and show you what I use the holdfast to do. So we put our piece of wood that we're going to be cutting our tenon in, bring it down on here, grab a mallet, a couple of swift whacks, and that's not coming back out now. So now this workpiece is held down to the bench. Now obviously it's open at this end so it can still swing a little bit, but we're chopping down so it's just enough of holding it there so it doesn't move. And then it allows us to come in with our chisel and we can do any chopping, mortising on the edge of our board like this. And obviously I have this lined up with the leg of my bench, which is here, so all the force is going through the leg. And as you can see, it's a very quick and simple process with the holdfast to hold and remove. A couple of taps hold your workpiece down, swift whack on the back, and it's released. So that covers mortising. What else can we do? So you have a bench dog in here like this. You've got a wide workpiece and you're planing along and it flips and flops all over the place, and you've got to keep moving it along to plane. Now this is quick and easy, but sometimes the workpiece can move around when you don't want. And what if you want to go across the grain? It's going to move. So I'll show you where the holdfast comes in now. So we've got a holdfast that holds things, so what do? Do we just put the board in like this, come in, attach it with the holdfast, and then we can hand plane. Stopping it from moving around, you can go across the grain like this, but then you have a holdfast in the way. So I'm going to introduce you to another little quick jig that makes this job a lot easier. So enter a little jig called the doze foot. Now all this really is a piece of wood, whichever thickness you need to hold whatever material you want so it's out of the way of your hand plane, with a 90-degree notch cutting the edge. Now this one I've put some 120 grit sandpaper on the back because you don't want it to move around. It's not going to work very well if it slides around. You want it to grip your workbench. So just a bit of sandpaper or something to grip there is kind of necessary for it to work well. So let me show you how it works. So instead of holding it with air, so we've got it back here where it's moving around and we don't want the hold fast in our way. So this comes in on the corner. So ideally you want your dog on this end posing on the opposite corner. It usually still holds, but you might have a few issues. Then we use that hold fast again. We hold that in place, and now this is locked onto the bench. This side's not moving, it can't move back and forwards. So what this allows us to do is obviously hand plane like this, right across the board, without having to move the board. But because we're now locked in this position, it allows us to traverse across our piece of wood along the full length. So as you can see, this simple little piece of wood, or plywood in this case, you could probably use masonite and get away with it. Anything that can hold on an angle like this is a useful little jig to expand the capabilities of your hold fast and holding work pieces to your workbench. But what if you don't have a hold fast? You could have a doze foot that runs off the edge of your bench, and you could clamp it to the edge of your bench, and you'd still get the advantages of it without a hold fast. But the hold fast allows you to move it around and use it in the middle of your workbench and get away with a shorter doze foot, which in my belief actually works more effectively. So what's the next way that we can hold work on our workbench? I don't have a tail vise, so this kind of replaces that tail vise system. What about clamps? What if you don't have a face vise? What other ways are there that we can hold workpieces? I think the next obvious progression here is to move on to clamps. Now, because I do a lot of framework, these are the main style of clamps I have, which are a panel clamp with a short face here. They're not a parallel clamp, but they do the job quite well. I also use this screw style clamp, which is an older style. Now I've got multiple different sizes of these, and I'll show you what we can do with these in a little bit. And obviously you can't go past the old F clamp. Now obviously there's a lot of other different clamps out there that can fulfill the same role. However, these are the ones that I've got and the ones that I'm using, so these are the ones I'm going to talk about. Obviously you can clamp with these clamps that have short jaws if you've got a nice flat flush bench and you can get your workpiece right to the edge of your bench, whether it's a style like I have here or if you've got the apron under here. As long as you can clamp down to that, you can hold your workpiece quite well. You can also clamp with your F clamps doing this, but if you've got a really deep apron you might not be able to clamp very well, and that could cause a few issues for you. But obviously the old F clamp works quite effectively here as well. And with that you're able to clamp down a lot of things. The only problem is that you then have your clamp in your way. So if you don't have holdfasts and you can't use the clamps on the edge of your bench like this because it's in the way because you want to hand plane or something, what's our next solution? It's using one of these wooden screw clamps. Now these are relatively cheap clamps, so this is a great solution for people on a budget. We can take our clamp here, and I'm going to keep this one free for closing up on stuff, so I'm going to clamp this jaw here. And I'm going to use just a clamp for this one. You can use your hold fast or whatever else you have to hold them. Now, once this is screwed down here, this has a lot of functionality. So we hold the workpiece here. We can use it for planing. We can grab our chisel and we can do our mortising. And so what we've got here, if you see closely, I've got this back jaw clamp down, just using a couple of F clamps. You can use your hold fast again or whatever else holds your work down. Now, this is a great little setup if you don't have a face vise and you want to hold some boards on end. So we've got it flush with the edge of the bench. We can then bring the piece of wood in here. So we can clamp it down like this. And we can do all our edge work on this. We can hold it in our vise here, and this allows us to hold workpieces up much higher. So what we can do is, if we're working on some delicate work, some carving, you can actually clamp things in and out of these vises. I've even used them when I've done some leather work, which you can see up on the axis over here, to actually hold it up while I was gluing it and holding it and working on it. So say we want to work on the curve here, so we can clamp this up so it's up nice and high. So we can get it up nice and high and work on it. Or say you're doing some carving, you can get it up nice and close to control your chisel and the work with your chisel right up high like this. It also allows you to work with much smaller pieces because you've got much smaller jaws depending on the size of clamp you're working with. And the last thing you can do with the wooden screw clamp is this kind of jaw allows you to just work with it and adjust the angles to hold a variety of different shapes, odd shapes, round shapes, uneven shapes, angled pieces, wedged pieces. So the holding ability of the wooden screw clamp it's endless. So that's just the 4 ways that I hold my workpieces. So would I like a tail vise? Yeah, perhaps I would. But the doe's foot and a planing stop, or a bench dog, does the same thing. You can even buy other things like the Veritas Wonder Dog, which goes straight into your little dog hole, and you can sort of wind that up and clamp things from the back, a little bit like a tail vise if you don't have one. There's lots of different hold down devices and clamps that can feed through dog holes to clamp things down, and a lot of them are more tailored towards the power tool side of things. But this is sort of the more traditional way, and this is the way and the cheaper ways that I like to hold my workpieces down. So I hope you get some value out of this video, especially for those of you that aren't sure what type of work holding capabilities you want on your workbench, or you're thinking you have to get the most expensive vices and tail vices to get the work done. I can just show you with what I've done here that you don't have to spend a lot to hold your workpieces down to get your work done or to get started, and it can allow you to try and work out your workflow to decide whether you want a face vise, whether you want a tail vise, and then you can choose to put what you want on your workbench instead of spending money on something you might not use. So if you like this video, please consider liking and subscribing, and as always, check out these great videos on the screen right now to help you with your woodworking journey. Bye for now.